So, again, I go back to the question because I've gotten a vague answer on the question, but I still am, I'm hungry for a harder answer and a more definite answer. Is the Texas skunk ape a Bigfoot, or is it our own thing? And why am I asking you?
It's something we share with Florida.
Well, you're going to have to get real specific because Texas shares almost everything with Florida. In ways, I think Florida is like they just drank more of the Kool-Aid. Too much. I think Texas took
more of the Tide Pod.
Texas just took a nibble off the Tide Pod.
Florida, it's like Alice in Wonderland. We got bigger and they got smaller.
They threw the whole thing back. It's like they mistook it for the red pill. They took the Tide Pod. It's like every other state, you took the red pill or the blue pill. If you're Florida, you take the Tide Pod. So that's the question. But why am I asking you? Why am I deferring to you? I do know.
Because I'm the only one here.
Well, I know you that, and I know you have some experience interacting with primates, and it's better than nothing.
Loosely, mildly. They were in cages, and I created enrichment treats and chopped vegetables.
You've talked about this before on the podcast.
Yes.
So this is some breaking news.
It was just volunteering. It's a wonderful sanctuary, but they don't have a lot of help because it's hard to trust people. I think the entire time I was volunteering, I might have been the only volunteer just because it's I would just come in and chop vegetables and leave all the time. And in a place like that where you have they had a lot of primates. It's very exciting, and people would want to wander and look around.
A lot of primates. I think that's really promising because, as you mentioned before, we were talking about Bigfoot in the sense that they are varietals of probably something with a common origin. I don't know if this commands the amount of respect that I'm about to give it, but since we're already talking about it, let's take it completely seriously, and let's try to elevate the discussion to a very bird's-eye academic perspective, to the extent that we, as lay people, can get it to that point, just to make things interesting, just for grins. We know that there are other kinds of monkeys in the New World. We call them New World monkeys, but they're tailed. So we have that. And the Bigfoot would be an ape. It would essentially be a great ape like the humans, just a different branch of that family. And we know that Homo sapiens at one point came across the land bridge and into the Americas, and that was the origin of the indigenous peoples of the Americas. So we know that hominids have made that journey. So knowing that, why wouldn't other branches of the primate family have made the same journey beyond simply Homo sapiens? Like, we know there are Neanderthals in Europe, and there were a lot of them. So knowing that, why couldn't there be some other kind of primate that made it varying distances across Asia? For example, the Yeti was known to have been sighted in the Himalayas. So maybe there were fewer of them than there were Neanderthals. So there's almost a non-existent record for them. And if there is, that it's isolated in caves and deep in forest. And maybe some of them made the journey even further than the Himalayas. Maybe some of them even made it across the land bridge that connected Asia to Alaska. And maybe that is potentially an origin story for these the ridiculous theories.
I think, well, if we're taking it seriously, we shouldn't call it ridiculous. But I think that if you watch videos or if you have any experience with some of the larger primates like gorillas, orangutans, and chimpanzees, you really see that you can see how you could see that there could be something more intelligent somewhere out there. The question is, why would it hide?
In this model.
And how would it hide in this world?
It would be an offshoot of the primate family, in the same sense that Neanderthal is a different kind of ape.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different kind of primate.
So I don't think it's ridiculous that something like that could exist.
A Neanderthal is not a human, but it's something else, and we know that it could breed with humans. And we have chimps and we have gorillas, which are, I guess it's reasonable to say that they are, in a way, less complicated creatures than humans are. They don't have as well-developed brains. So potentially there could be something between a gorilla and a human, probably perhaps in this wild, crazy idea that I'm outlining that probably isn't new to people who move in this world. I'm sure other people in the Bigfoot community have articulated similar theories because it seems obvious to me.
I'm just amazed that you're carrying this Bigfoot discussion.
And by people in the Bigfoot community,
I'm going to let you talk. You're Kanye.
I mean people at bus stops, and I guess that would be like the hollowed halls of Bigfoot academia. I'm thinking bus stations and the blood bank. So people in those areas, I'm sure this is old hat to them. It's the whatever theory, and but I don't move in that world, so I've never heard of the whatever theory. So this is all just off the top of my head. Why wouldn't there be something between potentially something between a gorilla and a human,
or a chimpanzee and a human,
and perhaps even much smaller numbers? It didn't flourish even to the extent that the Neanderthals did. And like I said, some of them didn't make it further than the Himalayas, and there's your Yeti.
It's possible, I think, but it's people, again, the question is, why would we not know about them? How would they hide, and why would they hide?
That's a great question. And also, if this did happen, wouldn't there be very numerous skeletal remains? Wouldn't there be some record of them being there?
Well, are we even looking for that? I know a lot of people are.
Some people look for that, and some people find it.
How would you even find it if they were in extremely remote areas?
Some people bury it and then call Art Bell.
You're talking about the 2001 Art Bell interview on Coast to Coast.
I didn't realize you had an encyclopedic memory for every episode of Art Bell, so I'm
Well, that's a really famous
things.
One. It was Robert and Bugs.
Jesus Christ, you have names. Well, let me, how about I tell you what I remember, and then you tell me what you remember about the story, and you can make corrections to my story. Since, like you said, I'm holding the speaking horn in the TP. And you're going to let it roll, baby roll. So this, I don't want to say redneck, but this redneck was in the woods of Texas, and his claim was that he came across actual Bigfoot. Like, he didn't say Texas Swamp Ape, he described them as being Bigfoot. And he was freaked out, so he kills one of them, and then after he's killed one of these poor creatures, he comes to the realization that, oh, the other one was a female, and that was this thing's wife. So in his backwoods logic, he comes to the conclusion that this is so sad, I need to kill the female too, so she doesn't have to live a life of grief without her male Bigfoot counterpart. So he ices her, and then he proceeds to give them a very nice burial. I guess the best burial he can put together, with he marks their graves with like a pack of cigarettes and just whatever is in his truck. And beyond that, he makes the call to Art Bell. Obviously, he doesn't call the police. You call Art Bell when something like that. When something like that has happened, and you give old Art, Uncle Art, the rundown, and that's how I remember it.
Well,
is that completely wrong?
No, I that's basically what happened. He and Robert, Bob, and Bugs, they were out with two friends, Bird Dog and Jim.
Okay, so there wasn't just one guy, because it
lives
in my
dudes.
memory as just being this dude.
No, it was 4 dudes, and they were out hunting, and they killed 2 Bigfoot. I don't remember all the details, but they ended up burying them. They thought, like the Patterson film.
So this huge passion.
They thought it was a woman because of the boobs.
This huge passion play of morality and moral choices did not actually happen.
It might have. I don't know.
Do you know where the story wears really thin for me? That not that they encountered these creatures, that they said were not only able to carry out their execution, but they were able to give them burials, and then call old Uncle Art. And you know how long it takes to get to Art when you call in, because there are a lot of different lines on the Art Bell show. There's the time travel line, there's the vampire line,
the wild card line,
and they give priority to, for example, the time traveler line before the Bigfoot line. And because if someone
it's that night,
they
have special nights.
If someone has a message from the future, you need to get those people on the air stat, so they have priority over the Bigfoot people.
Well, they have to vet a lot of people too.
Okay, here's why this stresses out the probability of the story that they were able to do all of these things. We've had family pets die, and we know what it's like to dig a very small hole in the yard. These people are saying, okay, if this is like a shack-sized creature, and there were two of them, you dug two shack-sized holes and filled them in after executing these creatures, and then were able to call Art Bell and tell them about it, all in the space of a day.
I don't think they did it in the same
No, boy,
day.
You didn't. It didn't happen.
That's a good point. That would be a really big hole to dig. But it was 4 guys.
2 big holes.
And they were all hunters. So
unless they did like
I'd like to think they're somewhat physically fit.
A Serbian-style mass grave and just kick them in like Mozart at the end of Amadeus.
Or maybe they set them on
story.
Fire, supernatural style, just in case.
Jesus.
Just to be sure.
That's how we should have started this discussion. I should have just gone, no. Just get to how we kill it.
Okay, well, there's an interesting thing. Ever since the Patterson-Gimlin film
and was
in
that
1967...
Were those swamp apes, or were they Bigfoot on vacation in Texas? Never mind.
Well, ever since that film...
No one would go on vacation in Texas, not even Bigfoot.
No.
You go to Las Vegas or Colorado or someplace nice.
A lot of people like the Riverwalk.
Represent Texas. We love you.
Anyway.
Biggest thing in the universe.
Ever since the Patterson film in 1967, I believe it's been illegal to hunt and kill Bigfoot in the state of Washington, Oregon, and Canada.
They actually passed legislation that names the Bigfoot.
Well, I think they had a lot of people, looking for big hairy men.
Did they just write in the small print, don't kill anything interesting?
I don't know. But I know that there is
So George Mirasan is safe.
I think it's up to a year in jail and a $1,000 fine for trying to hunt or kill a Bigfoot.
I think a lot of these guys would think that was worth it.
Well, in Texas, it's completely illegal to hunt and kill Bigfoot.
Well, I think you need a hunting license. I think
it's classified as a non-protected species.
I'm no Ted Nugent, so I can't drop big knowledge about hunting in Texas, but I think hunting altogether in Texas is very tightly regulated.
Mm-hmm. But Bigfoot is not a protected species, according to the, Fish and Wildlife. So if you want to kill Bigfoot, have at it.
So maybe very rich men are bringing them to Texas, like Jeffrey Jones brought.
This is interesting.
Jeffrey Jones brought John Leguizamo to the island in the past so that he could hunt him. Maybe rich men are doing this with Bigfoot.
Wait, rich men? We're talking about like the Bushes, like people who have like real money.
Okay, hold for edit.
Really, really rich men, like Texas oil men or something. Or collecting Bigfoot.
It's possible, but...
Or breeding Bigfoot. What, at Area 51, they're breeding Bigfoot and bringing them to Texas for hunters to hunt.
Well, I think Bigfoot is safe from most of those guys because their imagination...
Who taxidermies Bigfoot?
Their imagination, I think, never gets beyond, I'm going to be flown to Africa and I'm going to shoot an elephant that's not going to be a moving target. It's going to be very easy, and then I'll have it brought back to my McMansion in Texas.
I wonder if it's just Bigfoot can't be easy to hunt. Is that sort of like a Jean-Claude Van Damme situation?
It's funny you mention Jean-Claude Van Damme, because you're right. That was like The Pest, another film where I think an elite, rich class of people hunted humans for sport. So we both... brought the same gift to the party. I brought John Leguizamo. You brought Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I think mine was better.
I'm very ashamed of my gift. Sorry, John.
Okay, but it's that's an interesting theory.
But skeletal remains, there isn't much of a record for these creatures. You have that outlandish theory that I offered about the simplistic offshoot of the hominid family that made its way across the land bridge and died out in America, but there'd be skeletons.
But the sightings are always in very remote areas. They occasionally come onto people's property, people who live far, far out. But it's a lot of the sightings happen with people who are hiking.
But we found thousands
in areas they shouldn't
dinosaur
be in.
Fossils in Texas, and dinosaurs lived much longer time ago than the Bigfoot. So why wouldn't they find a single Bigfoot fossil or record?
I don't know, but
these are good questions.
But maybe that.
That's a kitty. There he goes.
Maybe these creatures only dwell in areas that are just so difficult to reach that it's not possible to find those kinds of remains. I mean, we found using Google Earth pyramids in rainforests that we can access.
So it can't all be like James Cameron when he was like he was searching for Jesus's grave, and then at a certain point he's like, what am I standing in? It's like, oh my God, this is Jesus.
The bones of Jesus, yes.
That never happened. There was a show about searching for Jesus's tomb that James Cameron produced, but in our minds he was actually in it, and he discovered the skeletal remains of Jesus, but that never actually happened.
It could have happened off camera.
Anything could happen off camera. Just ask Linda Hamilton. Ask Catherine Bigelow. Jesus.
Well, talking about the Texas skunk ape, there are a lot of sightings. It's supposed to be very, very active in East Texas and also Oklahoma.
I think Texans feel about East Texas the way a lot of people outside of Texas feel about Texas. It's like the next step.
It's a different place, but
and then beyond that is Oklahoma. It's like, God, don't even think about it.
But Honobia, Oklahoma has a Bigfoot festival because it's home of what they call the siege of Honobia, where Bigfoot converged on a family living in a remote area.
Do you know what you encounter at a Bigfoot festival? Not Bigfoot, but a lot of very, very colorful people. And you know the types.
I think it'd be fun. I'd like to go.
You know, it's always a certain kind of person that has these kinds of encounters. It's never like an obstetrician or something like that.
That's not true.
Always a certain. I know that you pushed back on this question before. I've made this point before, and you pushed back on it before. So go ahead.
No, well, I read about sightings from all kinds of people, all walks of life, and again, it's usually people who are either living in a very remote area or people who are hiking in very remote areas. I believe you.
You know what the counter argument is? That the people who are most willing to disclose these outlandish encounters are people who feel like they have nothing to lose. Mm-hmm. If you have a reputation and you have something to lose, maybe you just keep it to yourself.
Yes, that could be a part of it, but definitely. But I have seen all kinds of interviews with people who have seen Bigfoot or think they've seen Bigfoot or seen something.
What are you doing with your life? But as far as evidence, photographs, videos, I was thinking about that, and I was brought around to the name Shelley Duvall.
Again?
Shelley Duvall was an actress.
What are you doing with your life? We know what Shelley Duvall's doing with her life.
Have you seen Nashville? Anyway, Shelley Duvall was an actress who came onto the scene in the 70s. I don't think she was discovered by Robert Altman, but he sort of showed how you could use her. This is a really interesting looking person, and she's a good actress, and this is how you use her. And eventually Kubrick was like, okay, I'll use her. And he cast her in The Shining, which I think is her most famous role. But she was in other things. Like a few years later, she was in Roxanne. I think she was Daryl Hannah's like friend in Roxanne.
Mm-hmm.
So, but she, at one point, I don't want to say she lost her marbles, but she just started acting increasingly strange. And people on the internet these days will say, oh, it's because Kubrick berated her on the set of The Shining. But I'm not exactly buying that, because The Shining was released in 1980, and up until like the mid-90s, she was still acting fairly normal. So unless it's like one of those karate punches that just takes a long time to actually resonate, like you walk 10 steps and then you die, oh, Kubrick bullies you and you wait 15 years and then go crazy. Unless it's something like that, I don't think it is. I'm not buying. In Kubrick's defense, he might be a terrible asshole, but I don't think he could lead someone to insanity. I think she led herself there. But that's the backstory for Duvall. Flash forward to the current year, and apparently Duvall is alive and living somewhere in rural Texas, like our old friend the Swamp Ape. And like the Swamp Ape, there's not a whole lot of photographic or video evidences of Shelley Duvall, but that doesn't mean she doesn't exist. So her existence shows it's possible to live some kind of life in rural Texas and be undocumented. I mean, you'll hear reports about Duvall, like, she'll just pop up, like, you know, at the post office. It's like, oh my God. Or she'll be at the laundromat. It's like in a rural Texas town. And
this is actually a really fair point.
This is almost...
There's so much that people take for granted.
Let's call it the Shelley Duvall principle. If she can... And when you take into account that these, let's say, dislocated mythical apes probably lead much more obfuscated existences than even she does, the likelihood that there would be photographic or video evidence of them is like compound a million times more unlikely. But yet there's no video or photos of Shelley Duvall, and I don't know how she's surviving. She must still be getting royalty checks from Popeye or The Shining.
People just don't know to pull their phone out.
Or maybe is she spending money, or is she like eating the checks like a llama? I guess in that case, she'd still technically be living off royalties if she was eating them.
Was she kidnapped and taken to Area 51 and they cloned her?
So you're
now
saying
she's got a bunch of Shelley Duvalls working underground somewhere for the government?
You're saying these sightings of her in rural Texas are in fact doppelgangers, and they are imperfect copies, so she doesn't fully have her marbles. Area 51 has all her marbles.
Maybe.
Okay.
Who knows? Anything could happen.
So
life is stranger than we know.
It's a fair point. So Shelley Duvall, we know, is out there, and she's living.
But we don't have photo evidence.
We know she's living an undocumented life, and she's much more readily available to us than a Bigfoot would be. So if that can happen, maybe the other thing can happen. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. It's very similar. And then you add to it that people think these Bigfoot actually destroy security cameras and trail cams.
Shelley Duvall, I've heard, does the same thing.
Does she eat them?
Like a llama. She puts the royalty checks from Roxanne, which are probably worth more as food than being cash. It's probably just like for 5 cents. She puts them through a shredder and dumps tomato sauce on them and just eats them like spaghetti.
This is horrible. Oh my God. But there are a lot of interesting sightings, and you're not going to even ask me about what the siege of Hanobia is. I hear they call it Hanabi. Or
when you say it, my mind isn't. My brain doesn't seize on any one of those words, so it's just like, okay, it throws it out the window. So you're going to have to make it interesting to me. Tell me what it is.
Well, the story, the popular story, is that there was a family living on a rural homestead in Hanobia, Oklahoma, and it's an interesting little place. It's framed by mountains and
in Oklahoma? I don't think so, sister.
The Kiamichi Mountains, and if I go on and on, I'm going to feel like Gary Oldman describing his home to Winona Ryder and like Crying Diamonds.
Jeff Daniels trying to get people to go to Michigan. It's like, no thanks.
Yeah, we hate the tomate. But it's it was a family living on a rural homestead in this area that is very ripe for Bigfoot activity, and they had been planting snow peas to attract deer because at night they would use a spotlight to shoot deer from their porch. And the deer were attracted by the snow peas, and the Bigfoot were attracted by the deer. And it was kind of I guess if you have Bigfoot activity, you shouldn't set up an all-you-can-eat buffet for them.
This is kind of like Harry and the Hendersons, where
except much more gruesome.
He's out in the forest at the beginning of the film, and he's like a hunter, but then sometimes in those situations you get much more than you bargained for. You set up a certain kind of trap, and you get a much larger animal
they
than
were
you
also
imagine could be in the trap, and it's terrifying.
I heard a lot of stories from this family. Probably on Bigfoot.
Was it the Roll-Offs?
Sasquatch Chronicles?
It was the Roll-Offs, wasn't it? Can you imagine that if
the Roll-Offs were being terrified
a family
by Bigfoot?
of little people made the first major contact with the biggest people? Okay, go ahead. Go on.
No, I like it.
Jesus. Matt Roloff seemed very litigious. Is he still alive?
Didn't he have a hot air balloon?
I don't know. I disavow.
If he did, he could have been looking from an aerial view for
Matt,
Bigfoot.
I know you're very sensitive and litigious. This is all a joke. If you're alive, we don't mean any of it.
Mom really loved him. Our mother, who's passed away, loved that show and watched it all the time.
I think America fell in love with the Roll-Offs. I mean,
they were cute.
They were more wholesome than the Kardashians, weren't they?
They seemed to be a lovely family who did a lot of fun activities on their property.
Certainly better role models than the Kardashians.
Didn't they build a trebuchet?
They built a lot of things, but right, just save me from whatever comments I'm going to make about this. Please tell me about the Oklahoma festival.
Oh, well, okay. The festival happened because there is a lot of Bigfoot activity in this area. It's considered a hot spot like East Texas, and the siege of Honobia. This story is about a family that were, attracting Bigfoot by attracting deer, and they had freezers full of deer meat outside, and the Bigfoot came in and they would steal the deer meat and destroy security cameras, throw rocks at the house.
Is the siege of Honobia...
They tried to enter the house. Very Harry and the Hendersons.
Garth Brooks will tell you that the siege of Honobia is right there next to the Tulsa race riots in levels of importance to the history of Oklahoma.
I don't know how important this is to people from Oklahoma or Honobia, but it's a thing. And apparently they had all kinds of stories, and I think the North American Wood Ape Association got involved. They had people come out to try to document it, and it was just too dangerous. I don't remember the close of that story, but something that stuck out to me, they were finding that the Bigfoot, when they would shoot the deer, the Bigfoot would wait to hear the shot, and they would come and grab the deer. So like it was free food.
So they're like the raptors from Jurassic Park. They can learn, they can remember.
They figured out that when they heard that shot, that there was going to be dead deer. And they would find these deer carcasses where it looked like a really large creature had picked up the deer and punched through from the anus and ripped all the insides out through the back end.
I have no words.
That sounds horrific.
Okay.
I'm not sure about that. That's something I remember reading somewhere.
The biggest question is, does the Oklahoma Board of Tourism want to suppress or elevate the knowledge of this festival?
I don't know. I have no idea.
It
seemed to me to be something that only people in the cryptid community knew about.
Come explore our rich Bigfoot heritage, or is it like, forget about that and please just come visit the very nice river walk we've built in Oklahoma City and just forget about that? Which do you think it is? Just come visit the fucking Riverwalk. You know Oklahoma City has built a Riverwalk, and as San Antonians, I'm offended. In the last 10 years, they have built a copy of the Riverwalk in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, fuck them.
How do you feel about that?
Share the love, I don't know, but...
well, we can't copyright it. I mean, Venice has to hold the copyright on that.
Yeah, but get your own ideas. Come on.
Well, someone could say that to us. I mean, like I gave an example of Venice. There are much more ancient cities that have water.
Fuck them too.
I agree. As proud San Antonian, fuck them. Okay. To pick back up, Hanobia, is this the pride of Garth Brooks, or is it the embarrassment of Garth Brooks being, he's an Oklahoman?
I don't know that Garth Brooks knows anything about it.
What about
he seems
Ron
all
Howard?
Caught up in that.
I'm just gonna go.
Culture.
I'm just gonna list every Oklahoman I know.
Is Garth Brooks the pride of Oklahoma?
Is Garth Brooks the swamp ape, just shaved?
Oh my God, that could. I could entertain that.
He made the transformation into Chris Gaines. Maybe that wasn't his first transformation.
These Bigfoot, they can fool you.
The thunder rolls.
They're
You never know.
Shapeshifters.
The lightning strikes.
Well, I think that it's a.
Maybe when he said that they call the thing a rodeo, he was talking about this festival.
It could be, for all we know, but it seems it's a remote area. It's not high traffic, and that's the point. Bigfoot choose areas usually near water.
You could just say it's in Oklahoma.
Very inaccessible.
Then it's sort of understood that it's remote.
Well, a little further remote than that, even for Oklahoma. If you remember when we drove into Washington State, you really get the sense that, yes, Bigfoot could disappear in these mountains.
Yeah,
and
it's like a...
any area like that, that's the kind of area that Bigfoot likes. They thrive in these areas. It's things that are inaccessible and unpalatable to us. That's not... Bigfoot's fine.
I remember Western Washington in particular being like a dense...
very, very dense.
Succulent rainforest. Just not a tropical rainforest. It was like, what's the other word? Like a coniferous rainforest?
Yes, and you could see something living out there, but also disappearing.
Like Kurt Cobain.
His town was very depressing.
It appeared and disappeared as quickly as like a remote Bigfoot camp.
And
that wasn't just go.
There are a lot of hunters in that area as well. I remember the grocery stores having mounted taxidermied heads.
Yes, it was.
There's something very disturbing about that area, and everybody seemed really unhappy.
His entire life and destiny and end made perfect sense when we got to Aberdeen. It's like, oh, we get it. We get it, bro. Sorry, man.
It's one of those things you
Courtney
have to
Log was just like,
experience.
oh God, that's like
just like seeing an actual chimpanzee in person. Until you saw Kurt Cobain's town, you didn't really understand the animal you were dealing with.
And Courtney Love on top of that that was the push. He went over right over the ledge.
Anyway, but Bigfoot, they're sighted in very remote areas, and there are things that attract them, like water and streams, deer, and it makes sense. This is a predator.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different kind of predator, but it's still just a predator, and it wants to eat, wants to drink clean water.
I think you're being a bit unfair with your characterization of it as a predator, because
it's a hunter.
The whole premise of my exploration of its
like Dido,
of its exploration of its hypothetical origins as a distant relation of humans. Would you characterize humans as predators or Neanderthals?
Yeah, we're kind of predator. We hunt.
Okay, but in the scope of human understanding, when we say predator, we're not talking about ourselves. We're talking about like more simple creatures like cats, and bears. Would you describe, if there were a creature like a barefoot, wouldn't that be putting it down?
A barefoot?
If there were a creature like a Bigfoot, wouldn't that be putting it down? Like that's not the whole story. That's just part of the story.
Well,
they're not as complicated as us, but they're more complicated than it, like a big cat, which is an
more
actual
complicated,
hunter.
But living as a baser animal.
Like hunter-gatherer.
Mm-hmm. Something that is dangerous because it's had to be.
So are the inhabitants of like Borneo just like Bigfoot? They're just living very simple.
You took it there.
should I take that out? Or just... No, but it just, I think it's even if it's insulting, I think it follows naturally those islands, there are places where human beings are living very simple lives. Are they better than Bigfoot? If there were a creature like Bigfoot, it's just trying to live its life.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is, and I think that...
Well, that's devastatingly insulting because we know even those tribes have songs and poetry, and they do.
How do we know Bigfoot doesn't?
You're right.
And we're encroaching on their habitat. I mean, I read that there's a lot of logging in Honobia, and Choctaw Nation put a road through the mountains. And this kind of human encroachment, it's... of course, if there's a Bigfoot, it's affecting Bigfoot. And there's going to be more clashes. More siege.
Feels bad,
like
man.
Situations.
Feels bad, man.
But
I kind of I'm not okay with just sitting here despairing about the plight of something that might not fucking exist.
Well, feel bad about anything that may or may not exist in these areas that we've never seen.
In existential grief about the encroachment upon the Care Bears Cloud City. It's like, oh, their cloud real estate is getting smaller and smaller every day because of these external forces.
No one claims to see Care Bears. They do claim to see Muppets on the TV when they're children at night.
You told me about this.
Yeah, that's very creepy. A lot of people say they've seen that. The evil Muppets on the TV that's not plugged in.
That, do they just mean like reruns of Fraggle Rock, which they're bringing back? Did you hear that news?
No.
They are rebooting Fraggle Rock. And you know it's just going to be CGI, and the same sort of people that complained about every other instance of practical effects being replaced by CGI are just going to have a field day with Fraggle Rock. It's like, oh my God, what have they done to my childhood? They're just trying to make money, bro.
Why are people so concerned with their childhood?
It's the last time they were happy.
That's sad.
Anyway, so I guess some of the Bigfoot have breasts.
Well... The 2001 incident with Bob and Bird Dog, and
the one we talked about earlier, where they
Bugs, the people with the amusing names, hunters in East Texas.
They were able to stage a very stately burial procession for Bigfoot and call Art Bell on the same day. They
surmised that one of them was a female because it had breasts, and there's a similar.
Wouldn't you?
I guess. But there's the Patterson film. They also thought that the classic film of Bigfoot.
Oh, it does sort of
have boobs.
Yes.
And Patterson's an interesting person. He was a cowboy, and like Art Bell, he's remained steadfast with his story all these years.
Patterson footage. I think if you're going to draw lines through America, this is as good a line as any. There's people for whom the Patterson footage was a major life-shaping event. And there are people for whom the Kennedy assassination, the Zapruder film, was a major life-changing event. It's like, pick your poison.
Well, if it's real, it is life-changing. But, I mean, how do you know that it's real? I know that they had a Hollywood special effects person check it out, the footage at the time, and he said that there was no way this could have been created. This is not a man in a suit. But I don't know. That's what I've read.
I don't know. I've heard it dismantled in other places. Like, I think Joe Rogan talked about it. He used to believe it, but now he doesn't because, what was it? He saw footage of the actor that is, people say, was in the suit, and it was a footage of the actor walking, and he said the way this actor walked was exactly the same, and it was obviously the same guy. So he felt like that was very, he was satisfied that discredited,
Maybe it does. I don't know, but
I don't know which episode of Joe Rogan that was. I'd have to.
So many people have seen this, and so many people believe it. Why?
Well, I've heard that a lot of people in Scandinavia believe in fairies.
Well, that could be true too.
Well, anything could be true.
But if a lot of people have seen it, at some point you have to wonder why so many people are talking about the same thing. There's a lot of hikers who talk about seeing this.
We've developed the scientific theory. You know, things have to be proven. I mean, we don't know what we don't know.
Well, if they exist, why do you think they use knocking to communicate? Do you think they're mute or telepathic?
That's like saying, if fairies exist, why did they molest you last night? It's like, okay, back up. I didn't agree to any of this.
Well, did they?
No.
I hear those elves. Those Spanish elves are really something else.
It was exactly like that scene in Ghostbusters where Dan Aykroyd is like basically raped by a ghost, but he enjoyed it. So it's funny. It was so controversial that they felt like they needed to cut it from the theatrical release, which they did.
Like the butt, the mermaid butt.
No, you know the scene I'm talking about. The ghost undoes his belt, and it's implied. They show his face, and it's like, oh, he's receiving oral sex from the ghost.
The belt being undone was a little too saucy.
Well, they felt like, I guess they thought, oh, we have a hit on our hands, and why curtail its potential audience? So let's just leave this, on the cutting room floor. But eventually made its way back, I think, into special editions.
I remember that, though.
It's more like the humor you'd see in Ivan Reitman's. I guess he directed Meatballs, like before that. So it's like some of that, like
that 1980s vulgar
teen,
humor,
like sex camp film comedy. I guess the producers behind Ghostbusters said, no, we don't need any of that. We could sell a lot of toys, and we're not going to do that, Ivan. Or maybe it was his choice. I don't want to answer for him.
No.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So, anyway, you were asking me about knocking noises.
Yeah, why would they use knocks?
Well, why do some Africans
people talk about
use
that a
clicks
lot
to speak? I mean, sometimes these
That's
things just happen.
You think it's a part of their language, what they've developed over time?
I'm not a
maybe if you're traveling.
Linguist. I'm not an anthropologist.
If you live in maybe if you live in the mountains and you're traveling great distances, it would be easier to communicate from far apart with knocking.
I think you're thinking about this in a very productive way, and
we're being productive. I get gold stars.
I think you're thinking of it in a very smart way, whereas I'm taking it less seriously. So I need to look to you as an example of how I should be thinking about this. Okay, that makes sense. They can vocalize, but they can't vocalize as loudly as they can knock on trees because these are big, powerful creatures. So I don't know. Maybe if you dropped a bunch of basketball players in the woods, eventually they'd just start knocking on trees to communicate with each other because they're long, tall, and powerful, and their voices are loud, but they're just not that loud. So they're like, let's start knocking on trees and let's develop a language, based on the knocks. Somewhere it's like Bigfoot Morse code. Just don't even address any of that about basketball players. Just dance past that. Just to bookend the whole issue with the Bigfoot teats, some of them have them.
Boobies. Bigfoot boobies.
Bazoongas. Dodarios.
Hairy?
You mean, we know that the creature is hairy, but are the breasts hairy, is what you're asking?
Is there a part of them that is exposed?
I don't have... I don't have
just the nipple.
I don't have a personal experience with any kind of Bigfoot.
But do you imagine maybe like
Bigfoot that I recognize as being women?
The fur is worn from the nipple, possibly.
I think if a relevation occurs in the future that just across the board causes a sea change, or rather an instant change in the belief in Bigfoot, meaning people suddenly believe in Bigfoot because their evidence has emerged that is absolutely irrepressible and undeniable. If that happens, then I think there will be a type of man that also emerges.
I'm just imagining
let me
some
say
sort
it.
of...
That wants to fuck them.
I think there already is that.
I didn't want to titty fuck that old Bigfoot right
I
there.
mean, do you remember the E.T. porno?
You ain't live till you gone Russian on a Bigfoot female, a woman Bigfoot.
Then do you remember those stills from the E.T. porno where they had people dressed as E.T.?
Yeah, I remember when you showed me that. I said, yeah, that's pretty weird. And I didn't think about it again.
And they look just like the knockoff E.T. in that movie. What was it? Hamodi?
It was real.
Sounds like Hanobia.
It was real people in E.T. cosplay having real sex.
But the costumes looked like the skin was molting.
I don't remember those. Maybe it just burned in your memory in a way that it didn't.
and Hamodi, I think it was Hamodi, the Iranian version.
Is it Iranian or the... I thought Hamodi was the Oklahoma Bigfoot Festival location.
That's Hanobia.
Okay.
But Hamodi was wasn't that an ET knockoff from another country, and the costume was very bad.
I don't think I ever saw that film, so I'm going to go to the judges on that, and you are the judges.
Yes, that happened.
I didn't see Nuki either, or whatever that was. Oh my
gosh, these films! I can't believe I've seen these films. They were really great, but I
feel like Vanilla Ice in this outfit, and also, for the longest time,
I'm wearing some kind of weird short thing, and yeah,
for the longest time I thought this shirt was white, and then I put this hat on and realized, oh, this isn't white. This is white. Is that just because it was washed with like a lot of blue jeans?
Possibly, but is it? I
think it used to be this
white.
Is
it stained or is it gray?
I think it's been discolored because I've washed it with the colors. I've mixed whites and colors, and I think this used to be this white. It just happened.
That's what people say about Bigfoot. It just happened. Like that guy who got stuck up in the wilderness.
You didn't make a racial joke.
Yes, I was skirting around
Thank
that.
God. But that's
thank the heavens.
Feeling
thank
like
Thor and Loki.
I feel like Vanilla Ice in this outfit. Like I'm just missing a gold chain, but Vanilla Ice just seems to be a guy really living his best life. So is it the worst thing in the world, feeling like Vanilla Ice?
No, I don't think he's totally a bad guy. But
you know who wasn't living their best life? Janine Garofalo, when she was sitting on that set while Vanilla Ice was destroying everything around her.
I don't remember this story.
She and several other B-list celebrities were on some kind of MTV program. It might have been MTV, it might have been another network. And Vanilla Ice, I guess he feels like they're taking the piss out of his career, so he's from Florida. So he just loses it, and he literally starts breaking things on the set, and Janine Garofalo just sits there paralyzed. You don't remember this?
No.
And then he storms off the set, and it's all on film. Remembering it, I have to think, you think Vanilla Ice, when he makes this calculus in his mind, should I start destroying the set? Do you think he takes into account which B-list actors are sitting around him? Because I think if it were the 70s and Oliver Reed and Richard Harris were sitting on either side of him, he wouldn't make the choice to start throwing a fit because he'd just have his neck broken by Oliver Reed.
I don't know. I'm not an authority on Vanilla Ice. Why was he called Vanilla Ice? Ice is already pretty...
Because Ice is cool, and he was a white guy. It was like a cognate with chocolate. I'm vanilla because I'm a white guy.
Is the counterpart to that black ice, like the kind you find on the road, and it's much more dangerous.
Chocolate is it's chocolate and vanilla. That's an obvious one, Mariah.
It's an Oreo.
Ebony and Ivory, Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson. That was a big hit. Say.
I don't want to.
Jesus. Do you think... I was watching the music video for that, and it's just Paul McCartney hanging out with Michael Jackson, but he's much older than Michael Jackson. Don't you think the Village people would wonder, what is going on here? Why is this...
Only the Village people?
Why is this middle-aged white man traveling around the countryside with, this, black kid? What is going on? Especially, in the 19th century, which is where the music video seems to be set.
I don't know. I'm not an authority on that time period.
Okay. Since I've led us into this weird space, I'll try to lead us back out. We were talking about Bigfoot tits. So I guess I guess since your body language is saying, Shannon, you brought up some really weird shit. Well, Mariah, you were talking about some really weird shit and have been the entire fucking podcast. So,
but I'm not talking about it.
How can you judge me about introducing this weird topic?
I haven't judged.
Okay, and I think those aren't weird observations about the music video for Say. I think any normal person would just draw the same conclusions. This is weird.
But is any normal person thinking about Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson? Unless you're like Chris Tucker.
Okay, the music video for Say 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 has tens of millions of views on YouTube. So there are people thinking about this.
Well, no, people are thinking about the song. They're not thinking about the people singing the song necessarily.
They're absolutely thinking about the people singing it if they watch the music video.
Maybe it's just one of those situations where people are so iconic that you forget that they have ages or families or natural desires.
That's it. Are we done?
What about Bigfoot? Could you go into the woods and sing Say, Say, Say and get the knockback? Or would they just throw a tree and say, shut that shit down?
Would it be like,
down?
Say, Say, Say?
No.
And is that a copyright strike?
Yes, I was going to say. Okay.
McCartney, you have enough money.
Okay.
LaToya, you have enough money.
What about the people who have said that their trailers, Mormons say that their trailers have been shook on reservations by skinwalkers who are Bigfoot?
Shook? You mean
knocked back and forth.
You mean shook
you
like
hear a lot
you mean
about
shook
that.
like Jason Terry when LeBron James dunked on him, or something else?
I mean, some large, hairy creatures.
That's what Jason Terry said. That happened to me.
Are taking control of your trailer and knocking it back and forth to scare the crap out of you.
Like you're the kids in the Ford Explorer in Jurassic Park. It's like something is just shaking the shit out of this thing I'm in, and I can't get out of this thing, so I'm just in full-on panic mode. Mm-hmm. That's what it would be like, definitely.
But you're out in the middle of nowhere. It's dark. What do you do?
Wait for Jeff Goldblum to save you.
He's on a beach somewhere, crawling around in the sand naked.
Yeah,
having a sensory issue.
He's laying on a beach somewhere covered in oil and doesn't care about your Bigfoot problems.
He didn't care about the dinosaur problems. It was a check. He picks up a lot of checks.
But unlike Shelley Duvall, he cashes his because they're reasonable amounts of money, so they're worth taking to the bank.
Yeah.
Otherwise, apparently you just eat them.
I don't know. What does Jeff Goldblum eat?
He seems like sort of a laconic Buddhist type, so he's probably some strain of vegan.
But he also seems to be a sensualist, so...
Yeah, you're right. Forget the vegan stuff. He probably just enjoys steak and sushi and every kind of decadent pleasure in the world. Wine.
But he's also a minimalist.
Okay, so just sushi.
I think we narrowed it down.
But eat sushi.
But what are the kind of people who believe in Bigfoot? Because they're not always what you think they're going to be.
Okay.
You have to slot me into this.
Normal people who've seen Bigfoot and abnormal people.
It's the same with alien abduction. There are a lot of normal people who have seen aliens or believe they've been abducted by them.
That sounds really insulting and uncharitable, so let me expand. What kind of person believes in something that that is explained to them, but they cannot be shown any solid proof of it?
Why don't we say
yet
they think they've seen they've seen something and they can't explain it.
Okay, I'm not talking about people who've had a direct experience. I'm talking about a kind of person that is having Bigfoot, or take whatever phenomenon you like, explain to them. There's a personality type that will believe anything. Well, they'll just go with it.
Is he like a NASA scientist just saying it could be possible?
There's a personality type out there that will require proof, and there's a kind of person that won't. Well,
also, it's not so much about they don't believe it, they believe that it could be.
No, they believe it, Mariah. These people would bet their trailer park on the existence of Bigfoot, and they've seen nothing. They just saw a YouTube video, and they're like, yep, I believe it.
You could say that about a lot of things.
Certainly, but I don't want our podcast to get into trouble, and maybe we should just walk on by. Copyright.
I wonder how many people have actually been incarcerated for this hypothetical protection that Bigfoot has in Washington and Oregon and Canada. Do you think anyone has actually been arrested for hunting Bigfoot?
If they were arrested, what would the charge be?
Hunting Bigfoot.
Well, I'd ask how is hunting regulated in Washington State? I'd want to know more about that.
We sort of know how it's regulated in Texas.
But in the case of Washington,
a bit more loosely.
Would the charge against them be that you were hunting Bigfoot or you were hunting at all? I mean, if they had a hunting license, why couldn't they simply say, we weren't hunting Bigfoot, we're hunting deer, and we have a license, and not be arrested? It would involve an admission of hunting this dislocated mythical ape.
I'd like to know what the situation
Maybe they're just proud,
may be if it ever got to that point.
Son,
don't you think
you heard a Bigfoot? Well, that's what we're hunting. It would be like a proud admission.
But even then, don't you think that the game wardens would be like, no, we're not taking you in for hunting Bigfoot. Maybe they themselves don't even know that it's a law.
Maybe the game warden knows more than they're letting on. Maybe they are protecting something.
So everyone's in on this.
Everyone and no one.
What do you think about Bigfoot destroying trail cams? How are they even aware of their existence?
So,
I think there are a lot of people that wouldn't notice a trail cam at night.
How do you feel about Vanilla Ice destroying like cameras and sets and lights? I mean, it's the same question.
Well, I mean,
except it's not, because
that's
Vanilla
less
Ice
directed
is real.
behavior.
That was filmed.
That's more an outburst, and you could say people have seen.
So is this
people claim to have seen Bigfoot having outbursts?
Is this an outburst from Bigfoot, or is this some sort of strategy? Like Bigfoot knows the function of these cameras.
That's what I'm saying. How did they even know?
This is some sort of eye, and it's watching me, and I'm going to break this eye.
Yes. What does it suggest that there are reports that Bigfoot destroys trail cams and security cameras?
I feel like you're asking me the same question over and over again.
Well, what does that mean?
I don't know. What is its logic? What is its reasoning? What is? I mean, if this thing is
protecting its existence? Does it know somehow?
Don't you think that if trail cams are being destroyed, it's not Bigfoot? It's probably drunk tourist, or it's probably bucks and rut just going nuts.
Maybe, but these are people trying to see Bigfoot. They say, why can't we get footage of it?
And if these were recording remotely, then there'd be footage of their destruction that would give us the Holy Grail, the view of the ape.
Do you think that
doesn't exist?
Do you think it's possible that it does exist? It's just been confiscated.
Anything's possible, but at the end of the day, if you're like a forward-thinking, civilized person, you are going to need that proof, and that's where I stand.
But if it is confiscated, in that case,
confiscated by who? The park ranger or Bigfoot?
Everybody's in on it. What if the government just doesn't want people to freak out? And this is another thing like UFOs that will damage our ability to lead normal lives if we know this thing exists.
That the scale, the comprehensive action that would be necessary to tuck all of those things away is beyond the competence of the government. I think the government is less competent than you think.
But we're talking about the government as if it's one entity, but it's really a lot of different organizations that don't even communicate very much.
And they can't all act perfectly and in sync. They make mistakes all the time.
Obviously they don't, since a lot of people have sightings.
If this were happening all the time, you'd think there would be some photographs.
Well, it's not happening all the time because it can only happen in very remote areas.
My theory earlier was that this thing was in North America, and there are stories about it, but it died off a long time ago. And what you have are the residual stories passed on from indigenous people.
No, but what about all the sightings of hikers and woodsmen?
I think those are just rednecks. Okay.
Rogue Ren Fair activity.
This was an amazing discussion. And I think that's the podcast.
Wait, hang on. Rogue Ren Fair activity.
But that doesn't explain Bigfoot.
But what does it explain?
It explains bored older people with money that want to have some sad sex.